Can I now call on the Father of the House and Seanad David Norris?
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. I stand here today to announce that after 36 years, I will be resigning from Seanad. Following the order of business, I will formally submit my letter of resignation to An Cathaoirleach Jerry Bottomer. However, before I do so, I would like to take this opportunity to thank a number of people who have helped me along the way. And firstly, I want to mention my great friend, the incomparable Miriam Gordon-Smith. That applause is richly deserved. I'd also like to mention my election agent and friend over 36 years, Mr. Brian Murray. Brian has stuck with me from my early first attempts to my final campaign of 2020 and has been a source of good and honest advice. I will miss our senatorial collaborations. Secondly, I would like to thank the very many graduates who have supported me and given me their #1 vote consistently over many years. I've tried to represent them to the best of my ability. And I'd also like to mention all those people who in the old days mounted a kind of progress line of people stuffing and folding and putting envelopes and all this kind of stuff. They were an essential element in the early days. Lastly, I'd like to voice my appreciation for the many senatorial colleagues, past and present, who it has been a pleasure to collaborate with. Some names in particular jump to mind, such as Joe O'Toole, Brendan Ryan, Fergal Quinn, Joe Lee, John Crown and Sean Barrett, and of course my current colleagues and friends across all parties and none. Since this is my last opportunity to speak on the floor of this House, I would like to continue to advocate for peace in Palestine and in particular Gaza. What is happening to the inhabitants of Gaza is appalling and cannot be allowed to continue. Man's inhumanity to man is our greatest shame, and I have to say also that it goes completely against the Jewish ethic, which is l'chaim, to life. And this present government under Netanyahu has committed them, instead of to life, to death in overwhelming numbers for the unfortunate trapped citizens of Gaza. I deplore it completely. What is happening is appalling and cannot be allowed to continue. Man's inhumanity to man is our greatest shame. I urge you to continue to push for peace in our times. Finally, I would like to voice my support for the forthcoming referenda on the family. It is important that they succeed, and even though I will be retired, I will be, to the best of my ability, campaigning for their success. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Senator Norris, can I, before I call on the other members in the order of business, just as Cathaoirleach, thank you for your contribution and to wish you a long and healthy retirement. Your passion hasn't diminished, as we could see from that final contribution. As members will know, Senator Norris was elected first in 1987 as an independent senator for the University of Dublin and has been successfully re-elected at every Seanad election since then. And Brian, thank you for your wonderful job, and I don't know how you managed to handle him in all those election campaigns, but well done to you. Just for members to know, he won 9 elections, topping the poll on 6 of those occasions. You are the longest serving history in the history of Seanad, and you've been the Father of the House now for many years. And during your time as a member of the House, you've sponsored 34 bills. And one as recently as February of last year on domestic violence, which speaks to your lifetime commitment of issues in turning social issues, and we thank you for that. And as we said earlier in our conversation, you weren't just a one-trick pony, you were a man of many different parts, and your bills, as I said, covered a wide, diverse range of topics, yet your primary focus was on the issues of human rights and equalities, from abolition of the death penalty, housing and homelessness, disability rights, mental health, to the protection of the native Irish honeybee and the prohibition of conversion therapies. Just to inform members, we have received a letter from both An Tuachtaráin Michael D. Higgins and An Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, who wish to convey their deep appreciation to Senator Norris. In his letter to Senator Norris, An Tuachtaráin pays generous tribute to you and recalls the highlights of your illustrious career, which he describes very aptly as a journey of unwavering dedication to public service. President Higgins rightly attributes to Senator Norris a courage beyond the ordinary and predicts that your legacy will be as a champion of equality and diversity and will continue to inspire future generations to come. The President recalls with great pleasure his collaboration that both of you were members of the Seanad, and he also acknowledges your pride in our nation's rich heritage that you fostered through your love, care, performance of and devoted passion for James Joyce, rich literature to world literature. And President Higgins in his letter concludes by saying, I wish David Norris every happiness in his retirement and fulfilment as he begins this new chapter in his life, and I hope and I know that the House would agree with the President's aspiration and hope that you will have a well-deserved rest in the knowledge that your work has helped to make Ireland a better place for all. And An Taoiseach Leo Varadkar in his letter pays tribute to you, Senator Norris, on your leadership on universal and human rights for LGBT people, women and minorities, and he speaks that we stand on your shoulders. In your campaigns you showed true leadership, standing for causes that were unpopular and poorly understood, but above all appealing to our best instincts as human beings: kindness, compassion, tolerance and acceptance. And the Taoiseach also highlights that since you first became elected, today we now have 3 members of the Cabinet who are openly gay. So Senator Norris, the Taoiseach concludes his remarks to you by thanking you for protecting the heritage of our capital city, from Joyce to George in Dublin, and he says that your readings of Ulysses came alive for him in a way that he never appreciated before. So Senator Norris, on my own behalf and on behalf of the House, can I say to you, thank you so much. I owe you a huge debt of gratitude that words will never pay. Members of the LGBT community who paid tribute to you here last December rightly said and paid homage to you for the sterling work, the bravery and the courage you've shown. We thank you. We wish you well. We thank Miriam and her husband Noel, who are here today. Miriam has been almost 30 years with you. Miriam, you're a saint beyond words, and we thank you so much for that. And Noel, thank you for being a friend, and both of you shared a love of Miriam, and we hope that continues for many years. So I now call on Ir Cathaoirleach Dennis Donovan.
I rise today with some degree of sadness to address the Seanad and to you, Cathaoirleach, in the farewell to my colleague of approximately 25 years, Senator Norris, and apart from anything else, I would also consider him a good friend. As a university and independent senator, you had a remarkable, but sometimes at the start, certainly a difficult career. You came in here, I started in '89, you came in here, sometimes swimming against the tide. And in that regard, it reminded me of an augushine that a lady living close to where I grew up said to my mother, "You were the lily amongst the briars for a long time. And in fairness, you stood out, and the lily survived." Looking back over the 50 years approximately or more, when you I suppose, came out openly gay, which at that time was a very courageous and I suppose historic event. It wasn't an easy decision then, because society, and in particular the church that I was affiliated, the Catholic Church, actually suppressed all that idea. And I know things have come a long way, the wheel is fully turned, but you were the person that stood proudly behind that. As a former Cathaoirleach and last Cathaoirleach and colleague, I found you extremely courteous to the office of the chair and indeed to colleagues here. Your contributions were forthright, they were concise, there was no blathering. If you got the bit between your teeth, it was very hard to stop you. And you didn't suffer fools gladly either, which I think is an accolade for you. I must commend you particularly, Cathaoirleach, for, in particular, one issue. In the year of 2013, there was a referendum for the abolition of the Seanad. And I think, were it not for you and some of your maybe independent colleagues, and people thinking outside the box in Ireland at the time, that Seanad was gone. The success rate was 51.7 to 48.5, so to a narrow majority. And if it wasn't for the likes of you standing firm on that issue, you wouldn't be here, look, and this chamber would go back to a ballroom. I would consider you, and I'm not being in any way facetious or being rubbing your ego, that you were in many ways within this chamber a gem. You were a voice for the undeprived. You spoke eloquently on many issues, very passionately, and I'm not going to them all. And you were actually very wise and very prudent and very knowledgeable on many of the issues that came before here, on justice, constitutionalists, or other issues. You had one small failing. You actually didn't know a lot about the fishing industry. Well, I hope you did, but you loved your lobster and your crab and your caviar, and I hope you'll have a lot of that when you go out here. I was going to, you may not have time for some two just final issues. One was to reflect on what your most outstanding, in your view, success you had in this chamber. I know you had many, but obviously one sticks out in your mind, and the other is what was the most upsetting and possibly deplorable kick in the teeth that you, Senator Norris, as an independent and powerful voice in this chamber, had. I'm not sure if you have time to elaborate on that, but I would like to know for my own personal storage. Thank you, Cahill.
And this on Seanad or Paddy Buck, come on.
Cahill, and I'm honoured to say a few words today in the absence of our leader, Senator Regina Doherty, who's in Brussels, and she's unavoidably absent. I was shocked when I heard that Senator Norris was resigning, because since I came into this House many moons ago, Senator Norris was always here, and he was always a friend, and he was always somebody that you could get advice of. Senator Norris, he was captured completely there by the Cathaoirleach, who summed up the President's and the Taoiseach's letter, and that has captured, in my view, the real Senator Norris. You're an amazing man. You fought many battles in this House, sometimes alone, but from my point of view, if you had an idea or if you were speaking on an issue and Senator Norris came in behind you, it was an unbelievable lift to have somebody of the stature of Senator Norris to come behind you, because he had a way with words, he was a champion of the language, and he would put the final touches to any case that anybody raised in this House. It was an honour, as I said, Senator Norris, to have served here in this House with you. You are one of the finest debaters in this country. I often, in my travels around the country, when they'd hear that you were in the Seanad, they'd say, "Do you know Senator Norris?" And nearly everybody would say, "You're about the only senator, I would think, that they'd say, 'Do you know Senator Norris?' And I would say, 'Of course I do, yes. What is he like?' It was always the next question, what was he like? So there was a certain curiosity about you, Senator Norris, and you lived up to that curiosity on many occasions. And I have one memory I have very vividly, Cathaoirleach, here in the chamber was during the referendum for the abolition of the Seanad. And when you reflect on it, the Taoiseach of the day, Enda Kenny, he appointed most of the Taoiseach's nominees, he appointed them as independent senators to the Seanad, with the result that the voting arrangements at that particular time was very tight. And of course, Senator Norris knew that. He could add, Senator Norris was well able to add. And he knew that when it came down to the passing of the legislation, that the votes would be very tight. So he pleaded with me to leave the chair and to come down onto the body of the floor here and vote against the bill. And he made a passionate plea to such an extent that I nearly did leave the chair and come down onto the floor. And of course, when the votes were cast and the sums were done, it was even Stephen. And I had to use my cast and vote to allow the referendum to go ahead. Of course, it could only have been blocked anyway, but that's what happened. But Senator Norris knew that, and he pleaded with me to come down, and of course he played to the gallery, of course, on that occasion as well. So, Senator Norris, I want to wish you, on behalf of the Fine Gael group, I want to wish you well in your retirement. There's not many people in this House in my time here that have retired, and I want to wish Senator O'Donnell well in his retirement as well, and wish him well for the future. But I'd say you could count on one hand, the amount of senators that has retired from the House. And we in Fine Gael here wish you well. You have played a very, very important role in this House over many, many years, the longest serving senator in the history of the state. So we wish you well and congratulate you for everything that you have done.
Margaret, can I also acknowledge the presence in the public gallery of the former leader and our colleague and friend, Senator Maurice Cummins. Maurice, you're very welcome today. And this on Seanad Romeo McDougall.
Clearly, I'd like to be completely identified with the sentiments that you have expressed about the departure from this chamber of Senator David Norris, and to echo the sentiments expressed by the President of Ireland and the Taoiseach of Ireland, and indeed the colleagues who have spoken already in this matter. Senator Norris was elected for the first time in 1987, and I, believe it or not, was elected to Dáil Éireann that day, and it seems a long, long time ago, a different century. But he did something which I never did, and that was he held his seat for all the intervening period. And from the moment that he was elected, he championed the causes in which he believed. Sometimes we forget in this chamber that when his fellow Trinity Senator Mary Robinson proposed a bill to repeal the ban on contraception, she couldn't even get a seconder in this House even to have it printed, and that the Archbishop of Dublin, the Catholic Archbishop of Dublin at the time, said that her bill was a curse on this country. And across the intervening decades, this society has been transformed. And what I want to say about Senator Norris's contribution is that it hasn't simply been in the area of gay rights, a cause in which he not merely passionately believed, but which he acted, in which he set up the Hirschfield Centre, in which he encouraged other people to stand up for themselves, in which he brought cases to the Irish courts. And again, to my slight shame, the Irish court system let him down in the Supreme Court decision, which effectively threw out his case, and he had to go to Strasbourg to put manners on the system of justice which we had at the time. All of that required immense courage, and it has been said here, and the President has said it in his letter, that courage was one of the hallmarks of David Norris's contribution to Irish public life. But it's all been done with a sense of fun and a sense of irreverence, and he doesn't take himself all that seriously, although he does have quite an opinion of himself, and he is willing to join in laughing at himself. He has, it's been said here today, championed the underprivileged, and I can attest to that. He's represented the educationally underprivileged graduates of Trinity College a long, long time, and those of us who represent the graduates of NUI are glad that he has been here to see justice done for that group. He has, in addition, done so much for other causes, the Palestinians, the issues like South Africa and apartheid and issues like that, which we are all forgetting today. And all I want to say is that on behalf of the independent group with whom you have served for the last number of years, it's been a pleasure dealing with you. We are sorry to see you go. We are glad to see that you are going in good order and with your drums beating still. and we wish you every happiness in your future years.
Thank you. And Seanad Roisin Garvey.
Dear Senator Norris, it is a pure honour to be in your company. It didn't happen half as much as I would have liked to have had. I remembered the day I was called up to the Seanad, the first person I thought of was you. And I was like, okay, that's an inspiring person. Imagine if I actually get to meet him and be in the same room as him. I was completely starstruck, because I remember being a very young teenager the day you were elected, and it was like a breath of fresh air in politics. I was a complete cynic. I heard a lot of the same voices saying the same things. I think one sketch said there's a minister for saying absolutely nothing 3 different ways. But you were the antithesis to that. And you were the glimmer of hope, I suppose, I got for caring about politics. And actually, you gave me a whole new sense of public service and a deep sense of the responsibility of all of us as a state and a democracy to play our part, whether it's in public life or volunteering or other ways. But I always found you inspiring in that you stood up and you put your head above the parapet and you kept it up there, and it's still up there. And it's not an easy place to be, because you always get shut down if you put your head above by somebody. And, you know, too many people follow the status quo and are silent about lots of issues we've had in this country for many, many decades. And I suppose you led the way on many, many different issues in this country, not just around gay rights, but you gave everybody a voice who might have been afraid to speak before. So I think you have to take a lot of credit for a lot of things that have changed in this country in the last few decades. You know, we had the 8th Amendment, we had the gay rights, marriage, of course you were involved in that, but even women's rights, and as a single mother I have to say, I found my own voice through people like you as well. So I hope you realise the reach you had. I was going to say you were a maverick, and I think you were way above your time, before your time. I do think that finally now some of the systems and some of the state rules have finally caught up with you, and it's great to hear that you're supporting the referendum that we're bringing in on the family, because I also think that's something archaic and decades behind, and you are definitely leading the way on that again. I'm delighted to hear you're going on the canvas, as I will be. So I just wanted to say it's really important to recognise people like you, to give other people some hope, and that they can be part of the solution and part of progress and part of change. Because we live in a world now that even in the last few years has become so polarised, and it's all about us and them, and I'm right and you're wrong, and there's no debate. The art of debate is disappearing quickly in a huge way thanks to social media and political point scoring, and hugely deep issues being used to score points as opposed to focusing on being resolved. And I have to say I find that a lot in politics, which is quite disappointing. And I loved debating. When I was in college, I have 3 All-Ireland debating medals, Oscar Gaeilge. You know, the art of debate is fading, and people like you were the ones that inspired me to keep going with that element of debate, because the States has completely been destroyed thanks to this polarisation, and I fear that similar things might happen here when I see political point scoring, and you're the antithesis to that, and you're exactly what we need in Irish politics. A credit to our country. Ní bheidh de le héad a rís ann gur míle maith agat.
Míle buchas and ish Glenn Rush and Seanad Rebecca Moynihan.
Thank you, Chair. And it's a privilege to be here at what is the end of an era with the retirement of Senator Norris, who's not just been a strong voice in this chamber, but also a strong voice nationally and internationally for human rights and for gay liberation. He leaves a mark on Ireland that is much different to the country that he was born into, and he has set the agenda for the country that we now live in. Thanks to Senator Norris, there are thousands of young gay men, women, trans, non-binary and queers who can live the life that they want to with no apology. And that is a choice that they can either live a big life or the right to live a small, happy life in the way that they choose. That is a remarkable achievement, and it's something that very few people can put claim to. Acting Leader, it would be remiss of us to be here today, though, and not raise the issue of what we are seeing happen in Gaza. Since October, what we have been watching has left a scar on most of our conscience. 25,000 people are dead, most of whom are women and children. We're seeing a generation of lost children. Women are giving birth without or having C-sections without anaesthetic. 50% of buildings are destroyed with no home for people to return to. We also have an Israeli government who are acting with impunity and who say that they will not stop until Hamas/Gaza is destroyed. There is no such thing as a day after in this type of war. It is only how people are left to deal with the trauma of what has come before. In a stunning statement this week, we saw Benjamin Netanyahu say that he doesn't support a two-state solution, which the international community have hung their coat on for such a long time. The international community has taken a hands-off approach in making no movement towards a peace process or a ceasefire. And we know from our own peace process that you can't negotiate a settlement until the guns and the bombs are put down. Ireland has been a voice of reason on the international stage, and now we need to step that up using our influence in both the EU and with the US to advocate for a ceasefire and permanent peace talks moving to a two-state solution. We know that peace can only take place when hostilities have stopped. And we know that you can win the argument and not win the peace. And what we need to do is advocate to try and win the peace.
Anish and Senator Alice Mary Higgins.
Thank you very much, Ciarán, and I'm delighted to be rising on behalf of all my colleagues in the Civil Engagement Group to pay tribute to our colleague and our friend David Norris. There has been some discussion of the extraordinary achievements of Senator Norris, his landmark case on decriminalisation of homosexuality, his advocacy, something that I think is really important, which is his battle to establish the Oireachtas Foreign Affairs Committee. To make sure there is a strong Oireachtas voice in the world, with other representatives at the time, exactly. But I was thinking about how to capture a sense of what it is and what it has been, an extraordinary honour to be here in the Seanad alongside Senator Norris. And I was thinking that as well as the legacy, as well as the extraordinary heritage work that he has done, as well as the work he's done in dragging Ireland and pushing Ireland to be a more just, equal and modern place, something that really actually reflects more of its citizens, one that deserves its citizens. He's also a champion of the endless present, what Joyce calls the endless present. And that quote from Ulysses of hold to the now, the here, through which all future plunges towards the past. And that is what it is when you are in the Seanad chamber, in a way, is that you are in the present moment and you need to be very present. And you are trying to honour and learn from and draw from the past, and at the same time build possibilities, hopes, construct legislation that you think will shape the future. And you are in that in-between moment. And I think it's there in the holding to the now and the here. Part of that is being open to the absurdities, to the humour of the moment. And I think that's something that Senator Norris always has done. And part of it is responding to the urgencies of that moment, the exact moment we're in. And we saw it today in your contribution on Order of Business. You spoke to the urgencies now, to the urgencies in terms of an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, not conditional, not partial, not down the line, immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Also, to the importance of the referenda that will be fought now, in the present, but that will need to draw on our learning from the past, that will hopefully shape a better future. This is part of what it is to be in the here and now. And if part of being in the here and now as well, of course, is to know that we are in the world, and that we are in a shared world. And that's why I think the establishment of that Foreign Affairs Committee, the consistent work for international human rights from you as an internationalist, has been extraordinary and is something that has set a tone for this chamber in terms of engaging, I believe, in that way. I know that I'm coming to the end of my time, but I want to also acknowledge for the Seanad that you have been a champion of the Seanad, a champion when those sought a short-sighted proposal was made to abolish the House. You were a champion of it, and you're a champion of it doing more. I know your long-standing work, which we must continue on Standing Order 41, is something that won't be forgotten and that we will continue to strengthen our scrutiny of legislation.
Thank you.
But I finally just want to say that your impact, Senator Norris, extends far beyond the confines of this chamber. And you are a source of inspiration and hope and solidarity to many in Irish society and across the world. And I thank you very much for all you have done and will continue to do.
Anish and Senator Fintan Warfield.
Good morning, Ciarán. I think, David, you have been a towering political campaigner, an academic, a historian. You have been the longest serving member of this House for good reason. I think I remember reading that your love of performance was partly came from your first experiences in the Players Theatre in Trinity College Dublin, but I think it was a meeting of the sexual liberation movement in 1973 that also seeded your gay rights activism. I think, like most gay men and women, you knew you were gay from the age of 9, and once described going to bed crying and praying that it was all a mistake, and that meet your sister, by the way. Losing yourself in books helped you to forget that you were different. But I know that some college friends at the time convinced you to go to Bartley Duns, and that was 1961, your first exposure to Dublin's gay subculture. I think it was the meeting of the sexual liberation movement 12 years later that profoundly impacted Irish society eventually, but also yourself. SLM included amongst its members Edmund Lynch, rest in peace, rest in power, responsible for introducing you to that group, I believe. Mary Dorsey, Hugo McManus, Margaret McWilliam, and Michael Kerrigan. The SLM campaigned on a wide platform of reform around abortion, divorce, contraception, and gay rights. And alongside with Belfast's Gay Liberation Society, it hosted Ireland's first symposium on homosexuality in February 1974. And within a year of that, there were organisations right across the island, in Belfast and in Dublin. And you were instrumental in founding the Irish gay rights movement. The first Irish gay man to appear on television, and expressing your aim of abolishing Victorian legislation. And with Senator Mary Robinson as senior counsel, that case would take 11 years as it wound its way from the High Court to the Supreme Court and eventually to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And along the way, you continued to champion the needs and the rights of Ireland's embattled sexual minorities in founding the National Gay Federation, now the LGBT Federation. And in 1979, you advanced a personal loan, a bank loan to help Hope and the Hirschfield Centre, Dublin's second attempt then at a resource centre, an LGBT community centre. At its time, one of the first of its kind in the world. So you've been, as others have mentioned, a champion for the people in Palestine and Gaza, for Dublin's Metro, for St George's Street and the Preservation Society. The list goes on and on. But I hope that you've been a huge inspiration to me and so many others. I hope in your retirement you enjoy a newfound freedom and you have the time now to finish the things that you haven't yet done.
Thank you. And this on Senator Timmy Dooley.
Thanks very much, Senator Norris, it's a sad day for many of us to see you reach a point where you have decided to hang up your work in this House. I had the pleasure to get to know you and I got elected here first in 2002. And on behalf of a bunch of us at that stage, really want to thank you for the way in which you assisted us in feeling at home. It was quite a daunting encounter for many of us who were elected for the first time to come into a chamber which is intimate in nature and of which there were very powerful speakers, great orators like yourself. You always encouraged us. Whatever we might have said or the approach we would have taken, you always had a word of encouragement when we walked out or for a coffee afterwards. And that was hugely helpful to us. But we learned also from the way in which you went about doing your business and the history that you'd had prior to us being elected to this House. You showed that populism isn't the only way to gain the respect of the public. You showed that by being a lone voice on occasion, the power of the reasoned argument could bring people around. It might take a bit longer, it might take more work, you might take a bit of flack along the way, but it was the right thing to do, rather than being in the herd where you didn't feel comfortable, perhaps, in the herd, but it was the easy way out and you'd get elected and re-elected. And you have shown, I think, a generation of politicians, if you believe in something and you believe it's right, stick with it and time will come. And others have made reference to your challenge of the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church at the time, and how that wasn't an easy path to follow because of the dominance that existed. But I was taken in my early stages here, having a group of nuns who had requested to visit Leinster House, and I took them to the restaurant, and you were there. And there were senior government ministers and people who might have had greater notoriety. The only one they wanted to meet was you. I suspect their Mother Superior wouldn't have been entirely enamoured at who the person that they most wanted to meet. But that shows you that the power that you'd had to change. Lots of people believed in you, but they maybe weren't prepared or were afraid to admit to it. But once the glass ceiling started to shatter, you shone through.
Thank you.
And your work is a testament, what you have achieved is a testament to your approach, to your work, your commitments and your belief. And just on behalf of myself, I want to thank you for your friendship over the past 20 years.
Good, Margaret, thank you. And this on Seanad Martin Conway.
And like others, I have to say it is a sad day, but it's also a day of celebration and recognition where we get to say very nice things about our good friend. And you think of words to describe Senator Norris, and many words have been mentioned here today, but one in particular is courage. What he did took enormous courage over the years. He did use the media when he needed to use the media, but he took them on as well. And we were all absolutely delighted when he won his court cases against the media when they wronged him back in 2013. And, maybe we need some people now of courage to take on social media and to take on the people who operate social media in the same way that David did the media back then. I think of, inspiration, it's been said. And yes, many, many people who don't have the privilege of being members of this House have been inspired by the career of probably the greatest senator in my lifetime in terms of David Norris. Encouragement is another word that I would describe him, because I remember when I was elected here first 13 years ago, as somebody from the west of Ireland with a disability who was somewhat different, trying to find my feet in this House, the one person that I have to say, along with our former leader, Senator Cummins, that really did encourage me was David Norris, and would have a word with you and say, it's good, you will make a difference, you just have to keep at it. And he spoke about two other great people that were here. One of them I knew, and that is Sean Barrett. I just think back then in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, the contributions of Sean Barrett, Fergal Quinn and David Norris. And back then, David spoke all the time on the order of business. And at the end of the day, you couldn't disagree with him. But the one thing I want to thank him for is his decency and friendship. And, over the years, and certainly in my early years, people would be up from home, family members and so on. You'd ring Miriam to know is David around because they wanted to meet him. And he never said no. He always gave his time. People loved you, and we all love you, David, and thank you so much.
Good, Margaret, thank you. And this on Senator Tom Clonan.
Good, Gairloch. And I want to congratulate my cousin, Senator Norris, on his resignation, which took us all by surprise, and for all of the reasons that's set out here. And I just also want to mention Senator Niall O'Donnell, and also to wish him and his family well. David has been a great inspiration for me. I remember back in the mid-80s as a student in Trinity, before Temple Bar, when the city centre was a dark place, I remember encountering David in a horse and carriage going up Dame Street, and he was shouting out the door, "Roll up for the Bram Stoker weekend in Trinity College." And so, he was always a bright light on what was at times a kind of a dark horizon. And he certainly inspired me, in my fight, and I've had my experience of adversity. I've seen where our ideas may fall on sterile ground, and as somebody said, where you find yourself amongst briars. But certainly, David has always been a great inspiration for me. And in 2016, I decided with my son Owen, who's a wheelchair user, you'd be well known to you all, to run for election. And I thought as a courtesy I should tell David. And I entertained the foolish, naive and forlorn idea that maybe David would say, "Oh well, I'll hand over to you," and that he'd give me an endorsement. So I rang David and told him that I was going to run on the Trinity panel. And David said, "Oh well, that's marvellous news." And then he said, "However, you will fail." And he was correct. But David, in saying that, went on to elaborate and to tell me that you have to run more, you have to try. And he quoted Beckett, "Ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better." And David's generosity over the years and his mentoring spirit and his friendship has been very generous in that regard. I just want to finally mention Miriam Smith, because in all the years of contact I've had with David and his support for us and for Owen getting into St Andrew's College, which was an act of great generosity, Miriam has been an absolutely wonderful person. I just finally want to quote Joyce. David, the time had come for him to set out on his journey westward. Yes, the newspapers were right. Snow was general all over Ireland. And I know that there will be sadness all over Ireland. Agus ní bheidh de lehéid a ríseán. And go well and enjoy many years of happy retirement.
Thank you. And this on Seanad O'Dimmer Wilson.
Thank you, Iarlach, and just to join in the words of welcome to Miriam and her husband, to your Director of Elections, and to my great friend, former Leader of this House, Maurice Cummins. It's great to see you here today. This is a sad day and a happy day. It's a day that we hoped would never come, but it has, and that has your decision, Senator Norris, and I wish you well in it. I have a number of speaking notes. I'm going to call them speaking notes because Senator Dooley referred to 2002 when we first came in here. Senator Norris took issue with the fact that some of us had scripts. So I refer now to my speaking notes, Senator Norris. Like you mentioned yourself, Cathaoirleach, David Norris is not and never has been a one-trick pony. His interests are almost as diverse as his opinions. He has spoken knowledgeably on many matters since taking his place in the 18 Seanad in April 1987, including gay rights, human rights, health, education, finance, industry and conservation. He's a former lecturer and also a celebrated Joycean scholar who has brought Bloomsday and James Joyce to a worldwide audience, which is another feather in his well-plumbed hat. But on his first day in this House, he showed how serious he was with his first adjournment on the first day, a motion calling for the government's response to the question of public education with regard to AIDS and funding thereof at the earliest possible date. And while his motion wasn't accepted by the Cathaoirleach of the day, who advised that it was a topic too wide to be discussed within the time constraints of the adjournments, his acceptance of the decision and immediate notice to the Cathaoirleach that he would raise the matter as a substantive motion, along with Senator Mary Robinson, was a sign of things to come from this pioneering and progressive senator who put forward inclusion again and again and again in his contributions. His keen interest in housing, planning and conservation not only showed in his passion for the restoration of his own house in Dublin's north inner city, his concerns about the destruction of Georgian streetscapes, to the condition of artworks in the National Gallery, and to the upkeep and maintenance of this building and complex. I know my time is up and my notes are too extensive, but just to say, finally, when I'm wrapping up Cathaoirleach, I just want to say to him, he was referred to by the former Cathaoirleach, Senator Donovan, as a gem. I know one of your favourite singer-songwriters was Christy Hennessy, and he had a song called I Am a Star. Well, Senator Norris, you are a star, and that star will shine brightly for decades and decades and decades to come. I wish you nothing but the best of luck into the future. And finally, Cathaoirleach, this is a special day. I have to right a wrong that was committed 10 years ago on David Norris, on Senator Norris. My 11-year-old daughter at the time, my eldest daughter, Roshi, met him in the canteen. He bought her tea. And as a gesture towards him, she gave me a box of what we didn't know. He has a vice, and it's not alcohol. He is addicted to tea cakes. She gave me a box 11 years ago to give to him. Somehow they never got to him. They disappeared in my office. But when she heard that this day was coming up yesterday, she went down to town and bought 2 boxes of and got here for you, Senator.
Thank you. And this on Senator Aisling Dolan. That's a first on the Seanad floor. Not to be consumed in the Seanad chamber, let me add.
I thought there'd be one for one for everyone in the audience. Senator Norris, it's been an absolute honour to share this chamber with you, and today I can only acknowledge the tributes that have been paid to you, and just to add my voice to that as well. And my voice is really just to say that you have left Ireland a better country, and to me there's no better tribute that someone can pay than that, and you have done that for the people of Ireland and people who, fought battles. And when you stood, and you stood alone at times, there were so many who stood in silence in support. But now, today, their voices ring strong and true across the country. Senator Norris, I guess I first, would have known you as well. I lived in Summerhill on North Circular Road, and of course where your home was, and when it was opened up for viewing, and you were so supportive as well of the older mansions and houses in Dublin. But it really was just to get an insight into the beauty in our city. And I think you've always spoken about that. And lately, of course, we sometimes don't hear so much about the beauty in our city and on the north side. I think you have been a shining light and, as we've heard, a star around that. And I just want to thank you for that. Although I'm a woman from the west of Ireland, beauty in all parts of our country, I think, is something that we need to acknowledge. I wish you were here. I wish you would be here, and I wish I had the chance to get to know you a little bit better. But I just want to say thank you for everything you've done to date, and I'm just glad that I've been able to share some time with you. So thank you very much.
Margaret, thank you, Senator. And Senator Marie Sherlock.
Margaret, I too wanted to join my Labour colleagues and indeed all colleagues here just in paying tribute to Senator Norris. And I think for any of us elected to Seanad, it's a privilege in itself to be elected. But to be elected and to be able to serve alongside a brilliant mind, a brilliant agitator, a brilliant campaigner is indeed a real honour. And I know that we, like Senator Garvey said, I think we would have loved, obviously, as new senators to have seen more of you in this Seanad term. But I think as somebody who was, I think, in senior infants when you were elected first to the Seanad, you were the public face. You were synonymous with Seanad Éireann. And in the minds of thousands of people across this country, you were what Seanad Éireann was meant to be, holding the government to account, being that independent, strong voice, and saying things that often the Dáil does not allow that space for. And I think you leave an incredible legacy across so many aspects of life in Ireland, that we have so much more a progressive country now than the country that you first became politically active in, is a huge credit to your perseverance, your tenacity, and to your campaigning over those years, alongside many others. And I know Senator Mary Robinson was mentioned a number of times today. I'm also conscious that any of us here, we're here because of the people with us, and indeed the tributes that have been paid to Miriam and indeed to all your team. It's an enormous credit to see a re-election year after year after year. But I suppose finally to say that politics has become so polarised and divisive now, and particularly when we look at other countries. But it's examples like you, Senator Norris, in terms of what is possible at a time when it was very dark, and I love that phrase, Senator Donovan, the lily amongst the briars, that change is possible, and that through perseverance that we can have a different country. So I want to wish you all the very, very best in your many years hopefully to come, and to thank you for all the work and what you're leaving behind in terms of your contribution to Irish life. Garmagat.
And it's lovely to be here in the Seanad, and as other new senators have spoken, it's a regret that we haven't shared in this experience of having you here in this chamber for longer and as often as we wanted to hear from you. In April '87, I was 4 years of age, so you have been my normal. You have been your representation, your flamboyancy, your speaking skills, your pride in who you are, have been my normal growing up. And that can't be underestimated. To have that, and I was one of those children who would have religiously tuned into Rockers Report. It's a great show. It shouldn't have been taken off our screens. But at that Rockers Report, every single evening when it was on, I tuned in. And who was I listening to? I was listening to you. And it shaped my life, it shaped this country's life, and it shaped us all for the better. So I suppose I want to thank you for that on behalf of my generations and the generations to come, because it is a very, very life well spent. And for your future, I wish you the very best of health, the very best of happiness, and I hope you continue to do what you do outside this house, but it's still making an impact in here. So go my gosh, and best of luck.
Becus Anish on Seanad Victor Bohan.
Thank you, Gohirlik. Well, what can I say? Farewell, my friend. I want to start firstly by saying I was greatly honoured that David would nominate me to contest the Seanad elections, as did Fergal Quinn, and as did Maureen O'Sullivan, and of course they were all independents of great stature. And I chose, and that might sound a bit facetious, a bit arrogant, but I particularly chose my own nominators, and I was delighted each of those of such high calibre, but particularly David, should nominate me to contest these elections as an independent. You're an independent voice, a strong independent voice. I just want to follow and not repeat what many other people have said. I want to particularly acknowledge Miriam here today, because I know she was the very backbone of your campaign and your team. And typical of any political colleague, and you, David, you chose your own time. What a unique thing to do in politics. You chose your own time, and this parliamentary chamber that you so much valued, loved and respected, to take this, your last bow as Seanad. You are a man of true grit, energy, charm, compassion, and as others have said, a great orator. All qualities used effectively in this Parliament and beyond to great effect. Articulate, debonair, persuasive, driven, imaginative, flamboyant, the ultimate showman, a skill you also used to great effect in the past, and I know that you will continue to do. I wish you, David, a warm farewell. This is not a sad day. You have done your work, and I think of somebody else who talked about doing the state some service in the lower house. You've done more than the state some service, and your courageous advocacy will be your enduring legacy. I wish you well, every happiness and joy in the future years that you have. Thank you, David.
Becus Anish on Seanad Lynn Bohan.
I just want to add my voice and take the opportunity to wish Senator Norris very well on his retirement. And as others have said, I haven't had the opportunity to work directly with you, but your reputation and your legacy is next to none. And I don't think there's a person in this house that didn't know who you were when they come in here. And you have impressed others to enter into politics, because you've been a champion for inclusion and progress, and to make society a much warmer and more welcoming place for everybody who lives within it. But I would also like to take the opportunity to wish my colleague and my friend well, Senator Niall O'Donnell, who's also announced his retirement, and like yourself, again, a strong voice for equality, for inclusion, a Gaeilgeoir, passionate about the Irish language, and also the rights, the Good Friday Agreement, and for those who live in the North, and always constantly bringing the issues to this house and making us all aware. So I want to wish both of you the very best in your retirement. And you're both hard acts to follow, but the show must go on, as they say. But best of luck to you in the future.
Margaret Anish and Seanad Eugene Murphy.
Happy to be here, Senator Norris. It's great to see you beaming today in the chamber, and you look well, which is great. I think we all were so concerned about your health over a period of time, and it really is fantastic to see you looking so well. And again, I'm a latecomer to this house, but my word, have you been so friendly, so helpful, so caring. And your good friend and my good friend, former Cathaoirleach Senator Brian Mullooley, constantly asks and talks about you, as did the former Cathaoirleach now deceased Sean Doherty, and they spoke in volumes about your contributions, but also about your fairness. And I just came across one phrase, Cathaoirleach. And I got it off the internet, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to refer to my age. Too many people refer to their age today. I wasn't as young as some of those people that are speaking. But I came across a phrase which I think is very apt today. A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. And my word, have you sung that song? And has everybody now listened to that song? Your wonderful contribution to Irish politics and Irish life will not be forgotten. You've been diligent, energetic, unflagging, dynamic, caring, and you have a wonderful sense of humour. And I wish you the very best for the future. For Margaret.
Margaret. Anish, Glenrich and Chandra, Vincent P. Martin.
I'm seeking leave of the House to take item number 14 on today's order paper before item number 1, so I can introduce my cross-party bill entitled Domestic Violence Amendment Bill 2024. Currently, a person who is charged with breaching a domestic violence protective order of any kind can only be prosecuted in a summary fashion, and the accused always faces a lighter bail regime. Domestic violence is often all about vulnerability. Victims of domestic violence will be heartened to learn that in one of his final parliamentary procedural acts in such a distinguished career, Senator Norris has kindly co-sponsored the bill that I propose to introduce and publish today. A hallmark of Senator Norris's career has been standing up for and being a voice for the vulnerable, for those who may not have a voice. The names Senators William Butler Yeats and David Norris come to mind today. Two people who have served this House with distinction, brilliant ambassadors for the upper house, Norris and Yeats, or is that Yeats and Norris? It's not the name of a New York law firm. Nor is it a name of a play on Broadway, but perhaps it should. No, they are two people who had a powering presence. All his life, Senator Norris has railed against, metaphorically speaking, more modern types of lockouts, famously described by Yeats as fumbling in a greasy till and add the halfpence to the pence and prayer to shivering prayer until we have dried the marrow from the bone. Senator Norris has ensured that the marrow has not been dried from the bone. I wish you well in retirement at the next chapter of your life. Romantic Ireland is not dead and gone as long as the Norris legacy lives on.
Anish and Shanador, Gamanashka, just in the context of your proposal, Senator, you require a seconder, and with the permission of the House, given that you referenced Senator Norris as being a signature to the bill, could I depart from usual procedure to ask Senator Norris to formally second the bill?
I formally second. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anish and Shanador Joy Crockwell.
Senator Norris, in October 2014, when I came in here for the by-election count, which saw me into this House, initially it was rather difficult to get down to the Cathaoirleach's dining room, and eventually when I arrived down there, the one person who stood beside me as the count took place was yourself. Your generosity, I will never forget on that day. And just as a matter of interest, my sister sent me a text this morning. She said, please tell David Norris that I've admired him all of my life. That's just... people out there, that's what they think of. When you think of Seanad, you think of David Norris, and the rest of us fall in somewhere behind that. So thank you for that. It is ironic, on the day that David Norris is retiring, that I have to draw the attention of this House to the House being used as a rubber stamp in the bills that are being brought forward for the 39th and 40th Amendment to the Constitution. I think it is appalling that 90 minutes have been allocated, with 20 minutes to the Minister and 70 minutes to be divided out between 60 senators. The deadline for the bill passes on the 23rd of the month in order to meet the ballot date of the 8th of March. This house, a house that you love, that you cherish, that you have spent years defending the democracy of, that you stood with people like Fergal Quinn to ensure that this house was not abolished in a referendum, is being used now as a rubber stamp with little or any care for the members or anything the members have to say. Bringing a bill to this House and not providing sufficient time to debate, making it perfectly clear that no amendments will be entertained under any circumstances is repugnant to the democracy of this country, and it is repugnant to everything David Norris ever stood for. I don't care which side of the amendments you're on. Or which side of the referendum you're on. The referendum needs proper democratic debate, and that's what this House is here for. If they don't want to do that, abolish the goddamn House and get rid of us all.
Colonel Margaret, and you might just amend your remarks. It's actually 2 hours, not 90 minutes, and I'm sure the leader who sets the business will outline that to you later on, but just to clarify, it isn't 90 minutes, but Colonel Margaret. And Seanad Kyogan.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I too want to lend my comments to Senator Norris today and to wish you every good health going forward as you leave the House today. I suppose for me it's about kindness, and that doesn't get mentioned very often in this House, but you have shown me tremendous kindness. Always had something positive to say to me any time that you have met me, and I value that. And it's lovely to see the story that Dermot Wilson told about his daughter today, that people remember your kindness in life. So that's something that I will cherish. You're a very colourful, flamboyant individual, extremely eloquent. People talked about your legacy within the legislation in this country and what you have done for minority voices on this island. You will not be forgotten by certainly anybody in here, but by society in general. And the things that you have done for minority voices will live long into the history books of this nation. I also want to lend my congratulations not congratulations, but commiserations to Sinn Féin as they have lost Neil O'Donnell. And he was a very strong voice for Northern voices in this Seanad too. And he also was one of the few people that would always speak to me in the corridor as well. He too showed me kindness, and for that I will be truly grateful. So good health to you. And to Miriam, as you retire as well. It's a different era for you that you're starting off as well. And you're leaving many friends in this House, and I hope you will come in and see us many times into the future. Thank you.
Before I call on the leader to reply, I just thank the members for their contributions, and as a mark of the esteem we all hold in you, David, that the order of business has been exclusively about your contribution to public life, and we thank you for that, and we wish you many years of retirement. And you know, political careers, the old adage was ended in failure. Yours is anything but ending in failure, so we wish you well. And could I also just again thank Senator Neil O'Donnell for his courtesy, his participation as a member of this House. As members have said, he was a strong advocate for the North, for the Irish language, and for Common New-Class Gael in particular. But he was a person that you could have a disagreement with on a political level, but on a personal level, you were always able to have a cup of tea or a chat with him. And he was a very nice person and a very gentle, kind person. And I wish him every success in his retirement. And before I call on the leader, just as the bell is about to go, Senator O'Sullivan, the last word is yours.
Thank you so much, Cathaoirleach, and I appreciate your indulgence, and I'm sorry for being late. I had a difficult passage. I had to chop down a few trees and ford a few streams and kill a few men to get here.
Well, we hope you didn't kill men or women.
But I wouldn't have missed it for anything. Just to say a few words about my dear friend David, who is a legend in his own lifetime and given a lifetime of service to this House. I'm very proud to say that I spent 16 years with him and got to know him and respect him highly. He's beloved around the country. If we ever have visitors to the House, naturally they'll want to see the Taoiseach or the Taoiseach, but the next person they'll always want to see is David Norris, and they'll bring that back down to Kerry or Cork or wherever they came from. David's contribution to society, especially in freeing the lives of homosexual people, will be his testimony for all time. I have had him in the House in all of his moods. I've had him, he was breathtaking, super imaginative, all encompassing, and I've had him when he can be catty and, and awkward and obstreperous, but always interesting and always somebody that you'd love to listen to, and you'll be sorely missed. And totally out of breath. I had lots more I'd love to say. Well. But I'm glad I made it, and thank you so much, Chairman.
Not at all. Anish and Canada Hall, Senator Clifford Lee.
Gurmagat, Cahirlach. 21 senators contributed. There was 20 until Senator O'Sullivan came in there, and all of them have paid glowing tribute to you, Senator Norris, and now it's my turn as acting leader on this very, very special day, and it's a great honour. You're the longest serving senator, and you're the longest serving senator for a reason, and that reason is everything that people have spoken about here today, your dedication to public service, your courage and your commitment to causes that were very, very unpopular. And, you know, the action that you took, speaking about your own personal life, really was an inspiration to many young people coming up, but people of your own generation who suffered in silence for years and years and felt outcast by society. And I think what you did by bringing challenges to the state and getting knocked back by the courts here, going as far as the European Court of Human Rights in 1988, was absolutely groundbreaking, and it showed people here in Ireland that if we're not willing to act and modernise as a country, there'll be someplace else telling us and holding us up to shame. And as a young law student, one of the first cases that we came across in constitutional law was your case, and I was always fascinated by it, and it was a great thrill to get to meet you and be a colleague of yours when I was elected a number of years ago, as expressed by many other colleagues here. So thank you very much for all you did, because that shattering of the glass ceiling, as it were, in regards to the modernisation of this country led to a ripple effect. Women who had been much under the cosh here in this country started to gain more rights and more confidence and to advocate for ourselves, and we've seen huge strides, and you've been to the forefront of that, whether it was the introduction of contraception, whether that was divorce, and many other causes that you championed. And I think, you know, I don't think anybody actually mentioned that you're a member of the Church of Ireland, and that is a very important part of you and your personality and your background and the voice, and it's one of the reasons why this chamber was created and on the foundation of the state to give minorities a voice. And your Church of Ireland heritage was very important to you, and it's very important to this House, and it's very important to everything that is done. So thank you very much for bringing that level of diversity to this House. And I wish you all the very best in the next chapter of your life, and I hope that you will come back and say hello to us every so often and enjoy your retirement. You've well deserved it now at this stage, and it's a great honour to serve here with you, and we will all miss you, but we'll all be here hopefully when you come back to visit us. I'd also like to pay tribute to Niall O'Donnell, as mentioned by some colleagues here. Niall and I were actually elected on the same week, so I know him quite well, and having served on a number of committees. And I was very sad to hear that he was resigning and retiring from this House before Christmas, because I think he brought an extra layer of diversity as well to this House. So I'm sure we'll all wish him very well in the next stage, and I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Niall O'Donnell. And I'd also like to pay tribute to Tom Hussey as well, as mentioned by the Cahirlach, a former member of this House who passed away. 3 senators made reference to the situation in Gaza: Senator Moynihan, Senator Alice Mary Higgins and Senator Norris himself. And I think we're all speaking on one voice here when I say that we're absolutely appalled at the worsening situation in Gaza. Every single life is precious, whether that's an Israeli life or a Palestinian life. Every life is equal, every life is precious. And we know from our own experience that the only way forward is through peaceful negotiation. That's the only way forward. And escalating violence and bloodshed on both sides will never ever solve anything. And if we want to see peace, like we've established peace in this country, a ceasefire is what's needed, and that's the only way that a route forward can be devised from this appalling situation. And I know that's something that the Taoiseach is actively working on behalf of the state. I'm very glad to see the domestic violence bill brought in by Senator Vincent P. Martin. In a previous life, I did a lot of work in this area, and you've very much pointed out a big flaw in the current system, so I look forward to that coming before us. Senator Crockwell, the referendum bill, it is scheduled for 2 hours on the schedule, and I suspect that will be adequate time to debate it. And that's the order of business.
Are you accepting Senator Martin, you are?
Oh yes, I'm accepting Senator Martin.
Okay, good, Margaret, thank you. And could I also welcome our colleague and friend on Ear Seanad and current Tánaiste Dála and leader of the Labour Party, Ivana Bacik-Tiddy, to the gallery. Senator, our Deputy Bacik, you're very welcome to say thank you to Senator Norris. Okay, thank you, Gurmagov. So, amendment to the order of business. Senator Vincent P. Martin has moved an amendment to the order of business that item 14 be taken before item 1. It's seconded by Senator Norris. The acting leader has indicated she's prepared to accept the amendment. Is the amendment agreed? Agreed. Is the order amendment, is the order of business as amended agreed?
Agreed.
Item 14, not agreed. The question is that the order of business is amended agreed. Those in favour say ta. Those against say nil. Question is carried. Okay. Most sincerely, and wish you many, many years of happy retirement. Gurmagov.
Thank you.
House stands. Can I ask the leader to propose a sus to 3:15, please?
I propose a sus to 3:15.
Agreed? Gurmagov, House stands suspended.
Come on.